Welcome to a new season of Leadership Live podcast, where talented people become extraordinary leaders. I'm Daphne Horowitz, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise and talk about real leadership issues. Down to earth, solid, caring and confident leadership. No theory, no pie in the sky, no frills or fluff. Because this is what the world needs most right now. For you to lead with confidence, clarity and impact, so that you can build a business that builds people, grows profit, and makes a difference. In a world where we are experiencing physical disconnection, how can we create meaningful connection? Through the COVID pandemic, we've moved from face-to-face interactions and being physically present with each other to the virtual world of meet and greet and conversation. It's become a way to even be more efficient at times, enabling us to meet people we may not have otherwise met. And at the same time, we ask ourselves, can our connection be as good and as deep as when we sit together over a cup of coffee or a meal? Can we deepen our relationships when we are unable to be physically together? This is the question Marc Marling posed for our coaching session today, and you get to listen in. Marc is a natural connector who has a passion for bringing people together for conversations around the dinner table. And this was the question he wanted to think about together. In our conversation, Marc gained some incredible insights, and I know that he was challenged to revisit his own assumptions and mindset and to create a new story about what's possible in a virtual world. It is the future, and we did see it coming, but maybe we didn't expect it to arrive quite so soon. And that's not all. Because then Marc asked to turn the tables and have me in the hot seat for an interview on his podcast. So stay tuned, because the next episode is the one where Marc will be interviewing me, using his connecting skills to find out more about me and my story. So as always, head on down to daphneHorowitz.com, where there are plenty of leadership resources for you to explore, and where I'll be launching my brand new offer for recently appointed CEOs who want to become world-class leaders and really lead thriving teams. So if you're curious about that, head on down there and have a look at the information. And for the rest of it, sit back and enjoy this conversation with Marc. Welcome, Marc. Wonderful to have you here.
I am glad to be here, Daphne. Thank you for inviting me on the show and for providing me with this coaching.
It's a pleasure, and I should say thank you for being brave, right?
I'm excited. I'm excited about this. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as you know, I have built. Actually, I have two podcasts of my own, and I have a side hustle business separate from my regular full-time work, if you will. And I have built a certain amount of audience. One show has actually been around for a couple of years and has done fairly well. But I'm always trying to figure out how do I not only build audience, but how do I want to build a relationship online, if you will. And this is a perfect timing given that we're dealing with COVID and all of these things. But I am trying to I don't want to talk at people. I want to talk with people. And so I think that is long time ago. I actually did part of my evolutions in work came from blogging. I was an early adopter to blogging. I blogged early on a very specific topic that got attention, and I wound up in much sort of bigger jobs than people at my age would be at those times. So
okay, hold on a second. So let's just dive in a little bit, because you've said you do a lot of things. So let's just take the blogging for a minute. What specific area were you known for as a blogger?
Oh, I was blogging on maritime law. I mean, nobody was blogging to begin with, let alone
sounds fascinating.
Well, let alone on maritime law.
Sorry. I don't mean to laugh at you.
You can. You're fine. It's a dorky topic, but it's what I do professionally. I am traditionally a maritime lawyer, and so I was blogging on maritime law back in my early 30s, and I wound up with a very big job, partially as a result of attention being given to me because of perceived expertise. Which was great. And I tell people all the time, if you put yourself out there, if you let it be known that this is an area that you know something about, then you tend to build an audience. I'm sure, Daphne, you probably see that likewise.
And I think, that's a hugely important, distinction or something to highlight over here is that maybe because I don't understand anything about maritime law and I hear a blog about maritime law might not be something that I would rush to go and search out. But the truth is, when you're an expert in your field and you put it out there in a way that's interesting to your audience, that's really what it's about. It's about building your audience, showing that you're the go-to person for a particular field. And that's what you did. And you did it probably in an area where nobody was blogging about maritime law at the time. So amazing. Okay, great. So you told us about is that still your regular work? Because you said you've got regular work, side hustle, 2 podcasts.
So regular work is I am a lawyer in a leadership role in a very large international shipping company.
Okay,
so,
fantastic.
Yep. So that is what I do.
That's your day job.
That's my day job.
Okay. And the side hustle?
And the side hustles are I have my own consultancy in the logistics space, although I'm not doing very much of that these days. But I wound up sort of transforming that and my second side hustle into opportunities. How best to explain it? Essentially, I do some consulting with startups and with entrepreneurs, trying to get them over the hurdles of getting started. And I used my experiences in leading large sections of a company and how that team develops, and use my real world experiences. Plus, my legal background is certainly helpful to helping companies get off the ground. People get off the ground when they don't know how to start. They literally get hung up on things that I consider to be no big deal because of what I know or what I do professionally. So I can help them demystify that, make that simpler. Okay. And so they can actually pursue their goal. And so I do some, interestingly, coaching, maybe differently than yours, consulting work, helping them get started. And then that led to a series of opportunities for strangers to get to know one another. And so this is where I said, being able to have conversations with people, not talk at people.
Yes. And you're talking about building relationships. That's the start of building relationships.
And so, yeah. So
and you've got your 2 podcasts.
Right. So Corporate Thought, Corporate Thought, which is the podcast that's also the name of the side hustle, is the business of working with folks. But we did, last year, pre-COVID, we did a series of dinners of strangers where we brought strangers into unique settings. We gave them homework in advance. We took away their cell phones. We said, no business cards, no business small chit chat. Instead, we're going to have a topic of the evening and eat an amazing meal in an incredible setting and with total strangers. And it was really amazing to see the reactions of these people who didn't know each other, who told very personal stories, under the condition that, we would not give any attribution to them as who they were in their story, but they still were opening themselves up in a room full of strangers. Really, really amazing. And it made me believe that, and this is all pre-COVID, that technology was causing a problem, that we are too easy to not to really know people, to not break bread with them, to not have personal conversations, that the networking event, which I can't stand, is, a business card dance. And and people immediately asking that horrible question about what do? And that's not how I operate.
Surface level and unauthentic.
Exactly.
And that what do you do question that people can't even answer most of the time. That's my big bugbear, is the what do you do question. Yeah.
So I remember the first time that I met you, and I know your audience here is not seeing you, but you have like these little medals hanging behind your desk, and you told me how you did. I think they were triathlons or something, and you
not triathlons, just half marathons.
Half marathons. And I have my own pile of medals back here too, hanging on my wall.
Yeah, I see them.
But but I asked you about that. I want to know. I'd rather know Daphne, the person, than what does first. Business will come later. If there's an opportunity to connect in business, I would rather do business with my friends than with others. So let's figure out how we're friends first. What are your reading interests? What are you watch? What are you binge watching right now? These kinds of things. Get to know the person, and the business will come. But that's not what we do at these networking events, right? Typically. So I set out to run unconferences and unconventional dinner type situations and places where people could get to know one another, understanding that if I brought amazing people into a room, people who I felt or other people felt were the most something, whatever that something is, that something will rub off and that they will build new friendships and new relationships. And that's one way where they will help each other move forward in whatever that is, whatever their calling, their ambition, why they're a entrepreneur, what have you.
When you said that just makes me feel good, that's not like a big word that you're using to describe something that you're doing and all the stuff. It's really like, that's when we get beyond the noise. Like, yes, if you had to write a blog on it, you would put a whole lot of words together beautifully to create a blog. But when we go into coaching, and I think this is a great moment that for the people listening as well, is to really understand that when we get into our heart place and when we connect with who we are, we start to use simple words and simple language, because the place of emotion and the place of language and words are two different places in our brain, okay, in our brain or body or whatever. So we really want to, so feeling good, tell me about a moment where you really felt that, just that joy, that feeling good. Tell me a story about something.
Sure. So I can, if it's okay, I'll tell you about one of these dinners we had last year.
Cool.
And so we had these dinners, and they were and just to set a setting, they're square tables. So there's no head of the table, tail of the table. They're always perfect squares. 3 people per side. So a total of 12 people around a square table. And we had put a lot of work into putting this together in advance. But I watched people I knew in the room. I personally, in advance of the evening, knew 3, 4 of the people at the table, 5 people at the table, 5 people at the table. The other 7, I never had laid eyes on, didn't know who they were at all. Complete strangers to me. And again, they were all strangers to one another, pretty much. And I watched them connect, and I watched age differences.
Just tell me one moment. Go back to that moment, put yourself there, and tell me that moment. What was it?
Yeah. So I watched a young man in his 20s connect at tell a story about he was an expecting father, and he was telling, and his child was born just a couple weeks after this event, but he was talking about his nervousness of this event with a complete stranger and with these other people in the room. And he built a connection with this one woman over the course of the evening, who was many, many years older than him. But he was telling the story, and her reaction and her relationship back to him. And I sat back and I just thought to myself, how I was so glad that I was able to put those 2 people in a room together who never would have met each other, who never would have connected. And that because I put together this dinner and these 2 people wound up at this table, that they were able to build a connection, which I know he was able to take something, bring it home with him, maybe take away some of his concerns and his fears he was having in that moment 2 weeks before the birth of his child. This woman gave him some words that made him feel more relaxed about it. And I thought, I made that happen.
Yeah. What did that make you feel that you had created? What did you create in that moment?
Well, I created the opportunity, but what I did for me, is, again, I felt satisfaction.
What did you create for yourself? And
I created this
feeling of you made it happen.
Yeah, gave me personal pride and joy, and
awesome.
And I had teammates on it, and okay. I felt that they did likewise.
That's fine. We'll give them credit. So, but I love that moment of when you thought, I made that happen. I can imagine that this is a feeling that has happened to you a few times in your life, where you sit back and you watch something happening and you go, I made this happen.
Yes, clearly. That's very true. And to me, that's the personal satisfaction, that knowing that the actions that I took and the effort and the work resulted in this. Is I am relatively goal-oriented, to see success. And so to me, that was a measurement of success.
It's amazing to me because I feel like you flow very quickly from that moment of, when you said just a couple of minutes ago, I made that happen. It was like in your body, I made that happen. And then you flow straight into the headspace of, well, this is what I do, and I create the opportunities, and there's a very quick transition from, okay, what would it be like to hold that space for a moment of, I made that happen. I made that happen. Okay, there was a team, and okay, there was but yeah, you made that happen.
Yes, and I do. I know it makes me feel good. I recognize that it does make me feel good, and there's probably a better word, but to me, just easily satisfaction. I feel personally satisfied. That feeling of I don't know, maybe consuming a meal and sitting back after the meal, right, and feeling good about that meal, that feeling of calmness and just feeling good about the moment that you're in. So when you ask me to relive it,
there's an enjoyment for me.
Yes.
It's like a real enjoyment because it was whatever it was, good food, not overeating and stuffing yourself, because that never feels good, actually, for me at least. But It's kind of just enjoying, savoring the.
Yes. And so that's why I said satisfied.
Satisfaction. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. So we've kind of gone into a bit of a story here and some depth around that level of joy, satisfaction. I feel like it's a deep feeling good, as you put it. And, the things that come up for me in that is your ability to be a super connector, your ability to build relationships, to bring people into a room who don't know each other, your ability to just really speak and create ease with people because you know so much and you can speak with anyone about anything. And how do you want to maybe look at all of this that we've kind of put out on the table and say, well, what do you want to do with that now?
Right. So that's where we get to what I want to do with it. And I'm trying to do it through podcasting, but I am trying to find all those feelings, all of those things that you just reiterated that I had said tend to be very in-person, very personal connection spaces, right? I could feel that while this is good, you and I are talking over Zoom right now. How much better might it be if we were breaking bread together and having this conversation over a meal? It takes away. I think there's a warmth that comes from the personal space, but I am trying to what I desire to find is a way to build those connections in a digital universe, in a new world, in a world where Daphne can be halfway across the world from me, and rather than never meet you, or perhaps only by happenstance, if we happen to be in the same country and all the moon and the stars line up, that we can take this opportunity, and maybe it's not this medium, maybe it's some other way, and build that same level of personal satisfaction. I've had touches of it. I've had tastes of it in a couple of conversations, but not all the time. And certainly I may have listeners. I have plenty of listeners, but I am not building the kind of personal connections with my listeners that I would love. If I could reinvent the world, it would be take this and turn it into a way where I'm building connections with each person who's listening to this conversation right now.
So you have this enormous talent. You are faced with this enormous challenge of, exactly as we moved into the technology era, you embraced this challenge in one way by doing the dinners with strangers. And now this added complication of the COVID pandemic that, puts it as more of a challenge for you. And for me, it's like you are the perfect person to transcend this challenge and bring connection in this crazy world that we're living in.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. What's coming up for you?
No, I'm listening. I'm with you. Yes, you're completely right. I want to do that.
How does a person with your talent transcend the challenges that we're faced with in order to do what you do best and really kind of bring that sense of joy and connection back to you? Because I feel that right now you're dealing with a whole loss of, the what could have been and how you want to see connections happening. So if you had to maybe just, you can grieve over that and say, okay, there is a loss here. There is a loss. We're not going to kind of minimize that. But how do you, with your talents, transcend that feeling of loss and say, I can create something even greater?
That's where... So I am not a person who spends too much time mourning the loss of the opportunity. I am trying. I don't want to use the word trying. I have a friend who yells at me if I use the word trying. I am, in fact, changing the methodology. We started a second podcast. I am connecting with people. You and I met through, I think, like some comment on LinkedIn initially. I work at meeting new people across the planet.
How many people
every
have you managed to do that over the time that we've been in this pandemic? Have you continued to meet new people?
Oh, yeah, and dozens online. And
would you say more than before pre-pandemic? Or
So up until a pre-pandemic, every one of my corporate thought podcasts were done in person because I liked that idea of breaking bread with someone and drinking a glass of wine and having a conversation that we would record. So I had my little digital recorder and I would bring it. There are even ones done in restaurants, and that's what I did. And then we got pandemic. And so travel went to, and I used to travel worldwide regularly. So it was easy to do. And travel went to a halt. So how am I going to meet new people? So I connected with some people I knew first and did recordings on Zoom. And then I started meeting new people around the world. And I have done interviews with people in the UK and in France and all over the United States, people who I never would have met before.
Exactly. So I don't want to state the obvious here, but this pandemic has brought you an opportunity to meet way more people than you could have ever with your travels and face-to-face.
100% agree. And now the only question is, how do I turn it away? How do I change two things? One is I know it doesn't still give me that same sense of satisfaction.
Okay.
Because it's a bit more sterile, maybe a word for it. It's a bit more procedural right now. So I want to move beyond the procedural and into the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece is, in order to bring part of that personal satisfaction, as I told you, isn't just me meeting them, but then me connecting them with other people, with that experience, that connection piece. And that is, to some extent, I hope it will come through the audience, that the listeners will connect with me, that I can start to build rapport with them, and then they can reach out and say, I try to connect them in a very simple way by giving LinkedIn information and contact details for the person who was on my show, but that I'll never know if they connect or not, or very rarely do I find that out. But I want to I want to help facilitate that. I would like to reinvent the way that we meet each other. And I'd like to be at the center of making that happen.
This is so amazing and beautiful to hear, because there's something about, you said you want to go beyond the procedural and sterile way that it feels to you right now online, and you want to be connecting people, it sounds to me like, in a meaningful way, not like here's their LinkedIn profile, go check, but you want to know, you want to be part of the process, and all of that leading to reinventing the way we meet each other. So what story are you telling yourself right now, or what assumptions are you making to say that it's not possible? You've got a big mission, a big, hairy, audacious goal, a big thing that seems actually crazily impossible at the moment with all the roadblocks and obstacles and whatever challenges we're facing. How do you approach it?
And that is the
$1 million question.
If that is what I want to figure out and solve and make happen.
Do you think you are trying to think about it too hard?
No, well, maybe.
What if you just did it?
Well,
what if you just did it?
I do. I just do every day.
What is wrong with it? What is not satisfying? What is not good about it?
Speed to fruition.
What is it? What does that mean?
I'm not getting there fast enough. I'm not. You can't
get there faster. Technology is bringing you in the fastest possible way to meet people.
Oh, well, sure. Technology
so the speed of fruition is that. Well, I'm sorry. I'm challenging that. I'm knocking that one down. That's rubbish. That's bullshit.
No, I mean the speed of getting. Of building those deeper connections. Yes, I can meet people. I can meet people all day online. I've got lots of ways to make that happen. It is the how to transform the sterile to a procedural.
So I'm going to challenge you once again, and I think that you've got a story there around the sterile. I think you've told yourself that it's sterile, but there is nothing sterile about it if you create it in the way that you are born to create it. The connection happens not because of the food and not because of the environment. It's because of you creating that opportunity with whatever you do so beautifully and magically.
Well, I think that is very fair, because yes. I often complain in things that in social media posts or in things that I write or say on the air, that we have, I call them squirrels, but they're not the squirrels that are distracting. They're not it's more the squirrels of self-doubt.
Exactly.
And so I recognize that some of this may very well be self-doubt, hidden a little bit in the form of, technology can't do it,
exactly.
or giving myself excuses.
Exactly.
So I appreciate.
Because honestly, like what I'm seeing is, if there's one person who's meant to reinvent the way we meet people, from what you've told me and how you've described you do things and how much you do, you are that person. And by constantly thinking it's too sterile, it's too procedural, it's not going to work, technology, blah, 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 all of that is just stopping you from doing what you need to do and being who you need to be. Because that's where the magic is. It's in you. It's in you. Come on, Mark. Are you not feeling connected in this call?
Oh, of course.
Exactly. How connected are you feeling? I don't know that it would be different. Yes, sure, it would be lovely to have a meal together and, whatever, a long drawn out lunch. And maybe one day we can do that. But here we are working on something, diving deep, and I feel connected, which I feel you're connected as well. And you're welcome to tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you are correct. And I appreciate being challenged that way or asked to rethink what I'm looking at, for sure, because I can, in a moment of reflection, I can see, when you're in the moment, you don't see it. You just
do what you do.
If I can sit back for a moment and look at the situation, I can appreciate that I may be creating the obstacles in my own mind to some, and so overcoming those or ignoring, I actually think it's more of ignoring them, and because they'll continue to pop up. But
right. It's the stories. Like when I talk about mindset, it's the filter through which we see the world. So for me, there's a huge mindset filter standing here right now about technology, about how we need to meet each other, about how we create connections.
Yes. And tradition.
Just replace the filter.
You are right. No, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
Right, great. So what filter? Give me an example of a filter. And this is something I recognize, I hope, that you will kind of take away and think about, because I think it has to still process. But if you just had to not overthink it and go with your gut, what filter comes up for you that you could replace it with to start looking at this whole situation differently?
That the opportunity that I have to meet the people who I wouldn't otherwise meet, because I can more easily, I can look at the technology as a benefit, as a way to, again, like Daphne, we wouldn't have met. Very unlikely. How about that?
Exactly. And if we look at this filter, we have just changed your filter or changed your mindset, or you can, I mean, it takes a little bit of practice and whatever, but the opportunity here is to switch filter from this is a challenge, this is an obstacle, to hey, there's an opportunity in this. How do I use it?
Yes. And so that is where, increasing maybe the depth of the conversation, because if I have to think for a moment about why does it feel, sterile or procedural, it's because it's, and maybe you're a great example of this, because you're challenging me to think more internally and to be more honest or deeper in conversation. And when you thought that I moved shallow again, you called me on it. But no,
so
that's good.
I call it head space and heart space,
Yeah, no, but that's good, because I think that is something that lacks in the online conversation sometimes.
Yes.
You're two-dimensional, I'm two-dimensional, our conversation becomes two-dimensional.
Oh, I love that. I'm actually getting goosebumps at this moment, because I think you've highlighted something so important, that in the online space, this two-dimensionality, we have allowed our conversations to also be two-dimensional, maybe because of the filters that we think, well, if we were in person, we could do it better. If we were in person, we could go deeper. But actually, it doesn't have to be. And look how we did break this down here, and we did get deep. And it's like, yes, just take it deeper. Maybe it calls us to be more courageous, to take conversations deeper.
Yes.
In an online space.
Yeah. And so that is the challenge that I can walk away with from here, is to make my online conversations be more robust. If I can be more open and deeper in my part of the conversation, that will be good. You and I are having this conversation. You're willing to challenge me, which I appreciate, and that's part of what we're doing here, which is great. Mm-hmm. How do I, in a different kind of a conversation, like this is a coaching session online, which is great. In a different kind of a conversation, let's say an interview or a different kind of a conversation, I have always felt, and again, this is the negative self-talk, right, that in person, I can cajole, I can push, I can urge someone to be more open. In this two-dimensional space, I go back to how difficult would it be to be like, no, Daphne, that's a BS comment. Come on, let's unpack that more. Blah blah blah. Right? You see my point, or you understand my concern. I'm just going to
answer that with a question.
Please.
What do you need to give yourself permission to be or do or say?
I think there's I have a fear of. It's funny. I don't ever worry about pissing off my friends, because I always feel like my friendship should be deeper than that, than Mark being Mark. I have one friend who says I have no tact. That could be. I always think that it's coming from a place of love, that if I call you out, it's because I love you and I know you're better than that. And so I will call out that moment. And I'm happy if someone will call it out on me like you're doing here, which is great. But with a stranger, I'm more apt to be soft about it.
So here's what I'm hearing, Mark.
Okay.
I'm hearing you've got this amazing, unique ability and talent to bring people together, to be a super connector, to speak to people about different things, and to be this voice who can challenge and be that, whatever, let's call it tactless or whatever, this honest, radically honest person that can do it from love. And you are hiding that part of yourself in the online space because, or with a certain segment of your audience, because, I don't know, whatever the reason is, but you're not being fully, truly, authentically you, and some of your voice is being lost in that.
Agreed.
So how, and something that I know from my work is that when people step fully into who they are and put their voice out there, yes, you're going to piss off a whole lot of people, for sure. But hey, isn't that what you're saying? This is what you want. You want connections. You want real. You want depth. You want all of this.
Yes.
So don't hide a part of yourself if that's what you want to achieve.
Yep. So, okay.
That's the courage.
I like it. It's a little,
I love it.
Okay. It's a little hard. It becomes a little, I'm taking it in. So
yes.
Yes.
You will need to process this. You'll need to sit with us and let it kind of wash over you. And actually, I'm here if you need to kind of run some things by me or test some stuff out. Feel free.
I appreciate that. I know because I'm imagining, or the next podcast show, and with a complete stranger as they are now, and seeing how it goes.
Yes.
And maybe building a deeper show out of that.
Yeah,
so,
I love that. I'm actually getting goosebumps as we speak. Do you use goosebumps in the US?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps because it feels so you. It feels so on target. It feels to me like you bringing everything that you are, all your talents, all your, who you are really to the table and taking it to the level of depth that you want and creating a new way to meet online. Amazing. Yes. That's what we need in this world right now. We need it because that's our only way right now is this online space. So how do we deepen it? I love it. I'm super excited. I don't know about you, but I am.
No, I am. I'm very excited about it for sure.
But do let it process. And I would say my real advice to you at this point is to say, stay with your feelings on this because you'll notice you'll go heart, head. Your head will say a whole lot of things and your heart will feel something different. So come back to that space, the heart space. Journal about, write down about it. Write down your thoughts, write down your fears, write down how exciting it will be. Just work with yourself, process this a little bit in whatever way works best for you.
I've been taking little bits of notes as we've been talking. To also remind myself and to call it out, if you will.
Awesome.
Because I honestly I think I had not given a lot of this consideration, and I had used excuses to much of it. So I appreciate that.
That's powerful. It's powerful that you can actually kind of own that, admit that, look at it, take it out and look at it and say, this is what I've been doing.
Well, if I wasn't willing to admit that or do that, then I think I would be a fraud to myself, right?
And how many of us are walking around in this world in that way?
Well, sure, I understand, but I also hold myself to the standard of if I'm going to talk about it and say that about others, then I better live the way that I comment about it.
Awesome. Wow, Marc, this was an amazing conversation. I've loved it. Thank you. I want to ask you, what is your one insight gem takeaway from our conversation today?
Insight. That deep and powerful relationships can be formed virtually.
Wow. That's quite a mindset shift right there.
So, well, I feel like I've built this connection with you that didn't exist before. So I'm using that as a, if not a model, an example.
A test case.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So now can I put myself on the other side of that microphone and of that conversation?
Exactly. Awesome. So, thank you so much. This wraps up another episode of Leadership Live. Thank you for joining us today. And now let's continue the conversation. Do you have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Connect with me on LinkedIn or head on to my website at daphnahorovitz.com, where you can download a free sample of my new book, Weekly Habits for Extraordinary Leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend so that I can continue to reach and support leaders just like you. So tune in next week to Leadership Live, where talented people become extraordinary leaders.